Hi, today I'm talking with you about mind care for vegans. Being a vegan is at one end a liberating experience. You feel happy about it, you feel happy to be on the right side of ethics, that you are no longer responsible for the murder and death of innocent beings. It's like Gary Franchioni, the American legal scholar, as he says it. Veganism is not a sacrifice, it is a joy. Gandhiji reminded us that ahimsa is the highest duty. Even if we can't practice in full, we must try to understand its spirit and refrain as far as humanly possible. Now, on the other hand, personally and as a psychotherapist, in my interaction with other vegans, there are challenges and frustrations that vegans face in a predominantly non vegan carnist society. That when fellow human beings consume animal products on their plates or on their bodies, vegans have the burden of knowing that behind closed doors, the terror that those animals went through to be on those plates and to be on those bodies. And that can be very difficult to see your close friends and relatives and fellow human beings to be in collusion with such an industry, with such practices, which result in the torture and murder of innocent, living, sentient beings. So, this kind of experience itself can create its own kind of trauma for vegans, as well as having the burden of knowing this terror that exists. That is another area of stress. So, is mind care something that's very much needed or not? Well, mind care is divided into two areas. One is how we communicate to ourselves about whatever we experience. How do we interpret it? What meaning do we give it? What story we tell ourselves? And one is how we communicate to others with the kind of responses we get from others around us. And this is also a very big area, since most people are not aware and not awakened. Vegans can experience many times being ridiculed or put down or joked with, that you're just too nerdy or too fussy and things like that. So vegans do face a number of challenges in integrating with the rest of the society when they have taken this bold step. Now, once we become vegan, we usually concentrate right away on what will we put on our plates, what will we wear instead, and how will we remove all the non-vegan animal products from our lives. So we do this very well. Then we also think about activism in the sense of how do we spread the message and awaken more people, because once you're awakened, you do have a calling and a need to stop this violence, save these animals from that torture. So you automatically become an activist. But one area that we neglect is the mind. And does this matter? So as we saw that the mind is the experience and choice maker for every area of our lives. And when we neglect it, the mind operates in a very hidden way, the hidden unconscious as we call it. The unconscious is a place where memories are stored, experiences are stored, and when they are stored with kinds of ways of thinking or beliefs or interpretations. And these will operate unconsciously. And because they operate unconsciously, we may just show symptoms of it or acting out of it or choices based on it, which may sabotage us, which may sabotage our vegan movement, activism, as well as the way that we can influence others. So it might be a good place to care for our minds, both for being more effective activists and influencing others in positive ways, as well as for living a more holistic and effective life. And so the first thing when we want to look after our mind is we could understand what are the triggers. Yes. So we experience a number of triggers. The first triggers that we experience is when we become vegan itself. There is no other way for it but the first shock of making the connection, of allowing this information to percolate through and to know that this is the scale of violence and cruelty that I have been supporting. And it feels bad that all these years we supported it, and we may feel a kind of sadness, grief, guilt about it. It's a kind of a shock also, that oh my God, is it so bad? Is it like this? There's so much disbelief to something that has been a way of life for us, that we have been using animal products with a lot of love and attention and gifting it to each other and putting it onto our in our kitchens and our plates, that it is indeed shocking when our eyes open and we realize, oh my God, this is what is going on. And the second shock we face is that once we've made the transition, we find that when we talk about it to other people don't want to hear about it. They don't want to see the footage, they don't want to know more about it. And that hurts again, and that creates another trauma, that we are helpless in witnessing that violence which will go on because the people are not ready. And the shock also that many well-intentioned good people do bad things so visibly, so shockingly. And it is governments, it is social welfare organizations and NGOs which would be basically wanting to do good, spiritual gurus, leaders, teachers, people who are in charge of awakening compassion, maintaining compassion and kindness in the world, health workers. All of these people miss the point that animals deserve to be treated better, that they are sentient beings, they feel pain just like us, they want to live just like us, and humane slaughter is a lie. And so vegans go through those first two shocks till they acclimatize and realize that yes, we are indeed kind of powerless to get people to switch. Because sometimes when we switch, like when I switched, the first time when I got to know about veganism, I treated it as like a diet fad, and I never even went into it. I just heard the term and chucked it out. But the next time is when I saw the film Cowspiracy. And when I saw Cowspiracy, it was very instantaneous for me, the connection. And I could instantaneously decide to go vegan. Of course, it took me 3 to 6 months to go completely vegan and eliminate all the animal products that were in my food system. But for many people, that is not easy because we all have our own psychological needs, the need to fit in, the need to belong, and the need to have a power and say. And taking on veganism can put you into uncertainty, into a kind of powerlessness, into not fitting in, not belonging. But of course, it has the rewards of being on the right side of the society. And it's a kind of joy in that sense, that I'm no longer part of this crime, this kind of murder. So definitely these are things which are the first things that impact us. And definitely I would like to let all my vegan friends know that we have many beautiful processes in psychology that can assist you in healing this trauma that you may have taken on. I would just say also you can just be more compassionate to yourself because you have gone through this kind of traumatic experience of watching footage, of opening your eyes to this and being willing to see all this. What are the other triggers that we face? So these are the triggers, as I said, watching people around us consume animal products without a thought. And when we try to suggest to them, they tell us, please, please, please don't spoil my day. Don't show me all this stuff. I can't bear to watch all this stuff. So there is a willful ignorance as well. There are some people who are just ignorant because they don't know better. But there are a majority or a lot of people who will prefer to be willfully ignorant. And this can be a problem. Calling animals as food. All of these sensitivities now begin in us and we don't like it. So these can be triggers, and people also judging you as being nerdy, as being too fussy, as being nasty or preachy. All of this can be misleading advertisements, news items. These can trigger us, make vegans angry that such kind of lies are being shown, that there's a happy cow, there's a happy pig, and there is welfare for the animals, and it is totally fine to eat the animals because there's a welfare, or we have no other sources of protein and calcium. So all of these then turning to milk and turning to eggs, and And these all things can make anybody whose eyes have awakened to the extent of cruelty, of how live chicks are crushed in crushers, or pigs' tails are docked, and different kinds of cruelty that are going on, rape and stuff, that it can trigger in you a disheartenment, a disillusionment. And especially when you hear spiritual leaders, gurus, also recommend, doctors recommend eating meat and dairy products for healing. Have more ghee, have more paneer to get your proteins and vitamins. This can be very hard to take. So we've understood the triggers. Now, what we need to understand is that vegans are the new leaders. They are the torch bearers, bringing in love and compassion. And whether it is health, religion, spirituality, social work, relationship, bonding, we can agree that our guiding values for any of these things would never be cruelty, killing, injustice, exploitation, use, misuse. We would all agree that in all these fields, uh, the values that should guide our relationships, the values that should guide our social work, our spirituality, our governance, these would be justice, compassion, kindness, safety, caring. These would be the integral foundations that would then allow love uh, and trust to soak through all of us. So, veganism represents this shift. And when we are in the clutches of cruelty, killing, injustice, we are kind of dehumanized. When we don't even recognize that robotically we follow all of that. And when we come back to compassion as the main value. And what is surprising is you will hear many speakers, many people talk about, energy of love and healers, therapists, psychologists. Like, let's have more Reiki healers, people who are shamans, and let's have more love. Let's bring in the energy of love. Let's spread goodness around. Let people live in peace. Let's not have war. And yet, you will have no awareness or no connecting of the dots that when we are serving on our plates meat, eggs, dairy, fish, that this is a violence. There is no two ways about it. So we are not walking our talk. On one hand, we are talking compassion, and in the next hand, we are probably eating some chicken or meat, or and paying someone to kill. So we are taught this dehumanization right from our childhood in classrooms. We are taught speciesism. We are the supreme species, and animals are under us for our use and misuse. And so we are taught that might is right, that power is something that we use to dominate and use. We cut off the forests, and we exploit the land, and we use, So instead of thinking of power as something that is the energy to take care, those below us need our caretaking, they need our protection, they don't need our exploitation. And this is how we have been understanding power in a very patriarchal way, which is the domination way. And our consciousnesses are shifting. And over all these years, you would have seen many shifts happening. The abolition of child labor, the abolition of slavery, women's rights to vote, stopping child marriage. So these things have come to the fore and have been legitimized into our legal systems and our societal frameworks, though a lot of it does secretly go on. Secretly, there is a lot of exploitation that human beings do of other fellow human beings. But a lot of social justice movements have got a level of success by being coded into the law and into the government bodies. As yet, the Holocaust on animals are still regarded as a species below us and who don't deserve the same social justice or the same fair, kind treatment. And so therefore, this is a social justice movement for the voiceless in a way, or voices that are the unheard voices of suffering and screaming and shouting out of terror. And vegans are the leaders paving the way to shine a light on this and bring into the open the extent of cruelty, and that as human beings should we be doing it. So how do we care for our minds when we are the torch bearers, and we are pushing positivity and care and compassion? First, we need to know that what we are suffering is not a disorder, because in a non-vegan carnist world, we do feel a lot of anguish, and we do suffer a lot of stress symptoms, which I'll be talking about. And these stress symptoms that we face, these I would first like to just say they are not disorders. When we feel this depression, when we feel this anxiety, we would almost honor it and recognize that these are symbols of our caring and compassion, and we are willing to open our eyes and feel these feelings, and they are legitimate feelings. So we should not be considering them at all as something to medicate and to numb up and to uh, call it as a mental disorder. So in fact, we would now think about what Claire Mann, who is a vegan psychologist, Claire Mann, and she has named this condition, this anguish that all vegans are very familiar with, that consumes you 24/7. You are not able to take your mind off it, and you keep seeing it everywhere around you, that animals every second are being killed and we cannot stop this. That helplessness, that powerlessness, and yet that wish for to stop this holocaust, this feeling, the sadness, pain and grief for these animals, this anguish which we feel, and we feel it from our own fellow human beings, the people we loved and we trusted and who we still care for, and we have all these relationships of our near and dear ones, and they are in collusion with this crime. So it's very dissonant to comprehend how to navigate this complexity. And Claire Mann called this Vystopia. It's a very interesting terminology, and it's lovely to be able to say, okay, I'm suffering this Vystopia. It's got a legitimate name. It's not a disorder. It's something that's an energy, because when we are dissatisfied, we develop an energy to act, and maybe we need to channelize this energy that comes up of Vystopia into legitimate and more effective activism and spreading the light, and even in our own lives, bettering our abilities of communication. So it's a kind of existential crisis almost. What's the purpose of this life? What's the purpose of all this? If this is the cruelty we are going to live with, if this is what's going to happen. So this is what is Vystopia, and it comes from the root words like utopia, which means joy, love, kindness, freedom. A world like that, which would be beautiful, and we all imagine to be in that world, but we are like ostriches with a head in the sand, and we are in collusion with the crime of killing animals. So it is an artificial utopia. And then when your eyes open up, you come into dystopia, that this world looks like a dark place full of corruption, greed, competition, cruelty, and an uncaring attitude, exploitation. So it feels very dark. And we could, for vegans, call it Vystopia. Because in a sense, this is also an energy that's going to awaken others. So it's not fully dark. It has got a little bit of hope, because you yourself have made the transition. That means other people can make that transition. And so it reminds me again of Gary Francioni's saying that veganism is not about giving up anything or losing anything. It is about gaining the peace in yourself that comes from embracing non-violence and refusing to participate in the exploitation of the vulnerable of any species. So this is what we can use, that what are the symptoms of our Vystopia, or our stress, our distress as vegans. So we have these symptoms, which are how we see ourselves. We start feeling very guilty about what we did in the past. We may start feeling guilty that we are not able to prevent something. And I would recommend that instead we have to come to terms with our powerlessness, so that we can channelize and gain power through creative ways. Because if we just try to fight this powerlessness in a clumsy fashion, we will be what is called righteous. And a righteous person is a little bit blind. They are just thinking, I'm going to tell because it's the truth and I don't care about anything and I'm just going to say it. And when you do that, you may actually alienate other people, because you're really not looking at how should I tell so the other person will listen, and how should I listen so the other person will share with me. And that is called the paradigm of effectiveness. And we all, as vegans, need to move from being righteous, which stems from actually powerlessness, and we are going headlong into trying to grab power. And in that case, we come across as badgering and nasty and rude and irritable. We get irritable in our lives. But when we embrace our powerlessness, that yes, I'm doing what I can do, then we are better able to handle it. We don't get so overwhelmed. So the stress symptoms here might be overwhelm, guilt, powerlessness with ourselves. With the world, we see it as this dark, corrupt place where we can begin to see it as dehumanized human beings whom we are rehumanizing. So again, we can bring in our hope, and the same way that we did transition, other people will transition. And we see other human beings as cruel and indifferent and ignorant, which to some extent is what they are choosing. But what we need to now understand these people. So instead of carrying this type of a view of our fellow human beings, and many times I see these posts and see the vegan community often becomes consumed with hate of humans. I hate human beings. I hope they burn in hell, and human beings should be removed from the planet, and nobody should give birth to new babies and things like that. Well, how good is that? Because when you look like this embittered, hating human being type of a person, you are hardly a role model that anybody wants to emulate. Everybody would look at such a person and think, okay, I'm better off with my head in the sand, better off I don't know about this violence, then at least I'm a positive person and loving human beings. But hardly we want to show that when we embrace veganism, we go towards justice, we have faith in humans. We have faith in ourselves. When we hate humans, we even hate ourselves. How good is that? So we need to respect and value human beings. At core are compassionate. That's our original nature. But how do we become like this? What makes us this way? We have to understand the power of brainwashing. So to come out of this trap of our symptoms of Vystopia and stress, we need to understand, and this grief which we may feel post-traumatic stress symptoms, because we go through stress at certain moments, and these symptoms may come out like nightmares, hot flashes, obsessive thinking and things like this. But as we embrace this with better meanings and better relationship, we will handle this challenge better. And we first need to understand, why is it that our fellow human beings are dehumanized? They do not want to hear about this. They do not want to stop the cruelty, and they will prefer taste, and they will prefer their own health over such cruelty, because they have been brainwashed to think that's the only way they'll get their calcium, that's the only way they'll survive, that's the only way they will get their probiotics and whatnot. So there's a lot of brainwashing. There's an addiction to these things. There's socio-cultural conditioning, families conditioning you, for eons, and these recipes which have been handed down, and oh, in my family the most tastiest dishes made from paneer and eggs and things like this. And so we have to abandon all these identities. Oh, we Muslims do this, we Hindus do this, we Jains do this. So we have an identity through food and through products, and when we ask somebody to be vegan, we are telling them that they have to drop all of this and also cancel all of their past history as being cruel. But that's very hard to do. But we all have done that. We've realized that our past history has been cruel, and now we no longer choose to be cruel. But for a lot of people, that is very threatening, and especially if they've had traumatic childhoods, that sometimes can be more threatening. So people are brainwashed, and there is a lot of gaslighting by the industries itself. So the pigs are being tortured and screaming and not wanting to die, or even the same for the cows. But what you will see, and when they are milked and when they are artificially inseminated, all this is torturous to the animals. But what do the industries tell us? The industries tell us that they are happy cows, that they are happy pigs, that we are running a welfare farm. and we are protecting these animals actually, and we are looking after them, and then they die, which they would die anyways. This is what is called gaslighting. We see the same kind of gaslighting, say when somebody is having an extramarital affair. They may tell their spouse that you are possessive, you are clingy, you are imagining all these things, when the other person through their felt experience can make out that their partner is not being loyal to them. They are asked to discount their felt experience and believe these dominating words and take the blame on themselves, that you must be going mad, you are only the one who's possessive, you are the one clingy. So these kind of things can be what is called gaslighting. And for this kind of holocaust of animals to go on, there is a lot of gaslighting, there's a lot of brainwashing, there's a lot of propaganda. And so we do not need to blame the people who cannot awaken because they are steeped into it. And we need to see how we can creatively, slowly awaken them. And for that, we also need to value human beings, see potential in them for changing, no matter how cruel and finished they look, and approach them in ways which are better. Because we often approach them in very righteous, confrontational ways and we alienate people. So if we were to approach them in more peaceful or friendlier ways, literally, then we will be able to get them sometimes to convert or to transform. So with this, I would say these are our symptoms, and how will we free ourselves and look after our minds. First, I have a little formula for you. Spirit with non-judgmental effectiveness. So this is your code, spirit with non-judgmental effectiveness. And what does that mean? Let me share with you. It means that the first thing we'll do is we'll appreciate ourselves. First thing we'll do is appreciate ourselves. We'll appreciate and celebrate our small steps that we have taken to become vegan, and release the guilt. Okay, so that's S, self. Appreciate the self. The second thing you do is focus, accept your powerlessness. So that's P, spirit, P. It's P, powerlessness. Accept your powerlessness. You cannot, in a click of a button, change the whole world. But you have your place of power, which is focus on what you can do. Focus on what you can do. Don't get overwhelmed. Don't get negative. Don't get cynical, disillusioned, and go off into a corner sulking. But use your energy to do what you can do. Yes, that's when you admit your powerlessness, you will free your energies to do what you can do. The third thing is be a role model. Stop hating humans. Hate the behavior, not the person or the intention. At the core, that person and intention are good, but that person's intention is also corrupted with the brainwashing. Their behavior is corrupted with the brainwashing, and the people who brainwash are the people who are addicted to power. So we are addicted to power, we are addicted to products, and this is a story of all of that. And we need to awaken that we have enough, there is enough. We don't need to go with the scarcity. Even the people who want power, there's enough power for you, there's even enough abundance for you. And if we could really embrace abundance, we could come into compassion. And so we need to be representatives of abundance, joy, laughter, appreciating and loving human beings, and with that love transforming human beings to come into being a compassionate people. The third thing that we might have to do, spirit, the T, is be in your truth, stand in your truth, which means when you have ridicule, provocation, name calling, teasing happening with you, be very calm and cool. People have limitations and this is their defense mechanism. So be cool and calm with it. Don't judge it and get yourself hyped up. And instead, very coolly and calmly, standing in your power, talk about it, that no, I'm not fussy, no, I'm not this is just justice for animals. Do you support, ask them questions, do you support cruelty? Do you feel that kindness is important in the world today? Do you think compassion is important in how we treat each other? Can we show children how we chop up a pig? We can show children how we chop up a carrot. Can we show that? So should it exist in our society? So in this kind of asking reflective questions and standing in our own power, we could help people to understand it. And then the next point is that we could be with non-judgmental justice, I call it. So we go for justice, but we don't judge it because people are brainwashed. And of course, there are certain people who are totally psychopaths, that's a different story. But love the person at the core and their intention and all their good behaviors, and only reject those behaviors which are problematic. And you could use third person sentences kind of to bring out the truth. Humane slaughter is a lie. Animals don't want to die. So there are a lot of such messages that we could give. Um, you know, the world's forgotten victims that we need to remember. Let's align, walk our talk. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out that this is cruel or that there is evil here. So when we make such third person statements, then like when you are eating animals, you're eating dead animals, you're eating corpses, you're eating injustice, you're consuming cruelty. And when we say it in this fashion, it can sometimes help people to awaken, because remember, they are in a trance that they are colluding with this process. And that trance snaps with certain third person statements like this, just delivered very calmly. So when we deliver it in agitation, we wake up people's defense mechanisms, and so our messages are not absorbed. People are defensive and they are guarding their unconscious from taking in the information that you're giving them. So when you give your message in a very righteous and compulsive and agitated manner, the other person goes into a lower brain fight flight stress state. But when you are with a sing song voice, using their name, being very calm and cool, accepting their opposition, accepting their name calling, bantering back with them, not sarcasm but bantering back, uh, you they open up. They are no longer defensive, they are no longer guarded, and whatever you say starts going into their unconscious, and change starts happening, because change needs to happen at their unconscious level. And when they feel safe to not be forced or not be judged, then they will absorb that message. So spirit, we saw self, accept the self, accept the powerlessness, and do things creatively. Be a role model of joy and love and compassion. Don't hate the humans, don't be a misanthropist. Use the power of standing into your own truth with third person kind of sentences, and asking questions, gentle questions, and creating more reflection. Don't look for obedience from people, look for engagement, curiosity, reflection. And when people start getting reflective and curious, they start getting open-minded, and then change happens. But when you demand obedience, their doors are shut. So this is the next thing. And the final point is not to spirit with non-judgmental effectiveness. So instead of righteousness, I'm right, so I'm going to tell you and I'm going to force you and you have to listen, you are going towards effectiveness. Effectiveness is asking engaging questions, reflecting, soul searching type of questions at the right kind of a timing. And it is also keeping the mood very level, and the emotions that get associated to this discussion are more happy or calmer emotions. Therefore people are able to listen and not go into lower brain states and resist you or hate you. Yes. And you become more a representative of love and compassion yourself in the way that you deal with them and work with them. So talk more about your own reaction. I feel uncomfortable, I feel sad for the animals, and this starts awakening people. Even when you criticize people or give feedback to their action and choices. Affirm their goodness. Good people doing bad things, so it's like you are compassionate, I know that. Show that trust, but somehow you are in collusion and paying for this to happen. So that's a bit of a puzzle. Create it as a puzzle, and slowly that way we make inroads. So we are forthright in saying what we are saying, but we are saying it in creative ways. And in this way we are able to get people to shift, and we communicate to ourselves with more love and acceptance. We become role models of joy at being vegans, joy at introducing people to these things. And you will notice that the expert activists in the world, they always keep the equanimity no matter what oppositional questions they get from other people. They are quite forthright, they are quite direct, but with third person statements and in a very respect based manner they speak, and that's the key. So that nobody gets really put down or something, and their minds start opening up to what is veganism. And so slowly we will move towards a more and more vegan world, more compassionate ways of living. So thank you very much for listening, and do take care of your mind. Give yourself sometimes a heart touch. Touch is very good to care for the mind. Breath work is very good to take care of the mind. So there are a lot of tools out there which I can share with anybody who feels too much distress being a vegan. Don't hesitate to reach out and find ways to soothe and calm yourself. All the best, and enjoy a happy vegan life with a lot of awakening to many people. Thank you.